number of things, right?
Your water, please. This is for the Scituate Waterways Commission meeting of July 11th, 2017. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved, I guess, or second to David's.
And does anybody have a chance to look at the minutes from June 7th, 2017?
Yeah, that looked good.
Yeah, that's not good.
Do we have a motion?
Motion?
Second.
Motion. Second.
Okay, we have a guest with us tonight. We're going to have Brian introduce him in a few minutes. I'm going to jump right to Stephen Nolan's report. The harbor master is at Town Hall with the engineering group for the marine. So he's requested that he not be able to come tonight. What do you want me to just let everybody know is the treatment electrical system coming down this week, and they're going to have a meeting, and they're going to go over the system with him, and they're hoping to get some resolution tonight as to who the engineering company is going to be that will do the piling and engineering work. Third thing is Mike, yes, reported he's got 56 moorings now being given out in the relinquished moorings, which is pretty good.
So it's only about 30 open?
It was 84 at the top.
84 to
Just a little
start?
84, so
At 28? Okay.
he's doing pretty good. I mean, I know how the process is working, and some people are taking their full 7, 8, 9, 10 days. And then they're dropping it back on the harbor master, they don't want it. So that just delays it in as far as what they're trying to do. But he's doing a pretty good job, I think,
Yeah.
trying to get these things out.
That's great.
I think he's spending all of his time doing it.
Mike is.
Mike, yes.
Right, which is great. I heard separately to add to that, I know a guy that works for me actually, he had an 18-foot, he came up for an 18-foot mooring, and they were pressuring him, like, let's go make a decision, one way or the other.
People aren't really, they don't
But
understand.
why
the
wouldn't
weight
it,
of-
but why wouldn't he accept a mooring if he's got the boat and
Yeah,
on the list?
exactly.
And
Yeah.
Or it could be the area, you know?
He's got an antique boat, it's never been in the water, but anyway.
Well, there you go.
His issue was, he just told me, he said, they really pushed me, and that's what I'm reporting, that
I think
they did
he
a
has
good
to.
job in getting the decision out.
I think he has to, because there are a lot of people who think that if they wait the full 10 days, things are going to change.
Right.
And if after you're waiting for 12 to 15 years, things aren't going to change a whole lot.
Right.
You either take it or you don't take it. So,
And I think we should maybe get involved a little bit in how he's tracking those declines. In other words, I think it's in a book,
he's got a book. Yeah.
And so, 4 years from now, let's say that mooring comes up again, okay? The issue is going back 4 years of notes. I just think there may be a more efficient technological way to
I think if
keep
you've got
track.
one, if you've got one, you probably should tell them about it.
I don't have one. I mean, I have an Excel spreadsheet, but I did it for the
It's a
Aqua.
monster.
That's all it is an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But I don't think
It's a monster.
Ellen knows Excel, so
Yeah.
that may be a little bit of a challenge.
Well, if you think a spreadsheet would work, or it might help, you might want to show them.
Yeah,
Give them a shot at some things.
yeah, maybe I'll sit in there one day and see what they have. Or
Okay.
maybe we ought to ask them to come in, maybe,
That would be a great idea.
What, come in with his book?
The book.
something, yeah, what he's tracking of it.
So I had asked if it was an Excel spreadsheet that
Yeah.
is stored in 2 locations. In other
No, it's
words,
not. I know for a fact it's not.
He said
a
it-
spreadsheet.
it's not an Excel spreadsheet.
And it's a book.
Yeah, I mean, you can.
It's nothing electronic?
You can store things on Google Docs, there's plenty of.
Well, there was, he said what they were using was in the harbor master's office, but also in town hall where the backup server is for him, or his mail server.
No,
I think
no.
it's
I-
purely a piece
I
of
would think it
paper.
would just be one place, the hard drive, and then the server in town hall.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Right.
good, but I think it is,
a book.
He has a folder that has yellow pages.
Yeah.
It's yellow lined paper that he
Yeah.
ripped out of a pad, and at the top of each one, he has the mooring name and number. And then he starts on that sheet and says, I called such and such on this date. And he
That's what
flips to
Mike-
the next page, and the next page is the next mooring, and then the next page, and that's what the whole system
and
is.
those are his notes, and for notes, they're okay, but for the actual, when somebody goes back and says, 3 years ago, I got called,
I think Mike's main concern is not going back 3 years, it's the actual communications with the individual and what they say, so that when they say, wait a second, I told you I didn't want this mooring, and Mike gives it to him, or vice versa. He wants to have, he's got it all chronologically dated and kind of timestamped as to when all conversations took place.
But nothing's in a computer and
Right.
nothing's on a
What Dave's saying
server,
is 3
nothing's-
years from now, not 3 years back.
Yeah, 3
right?
years from now.
Something shows up.
When
And
the person
something
says,
should
one
be-
second, I didn't say
Something
anything.
should be in a computer somewhere
Yes.
at some point, whether it's
You're saying
scanned in.
when somebody's second refusal comes up and
Next
they say,
year.
I never said that.
Well, that's why he's documenting times and
Right.
telephone calls and emails and all that, to make sure that there is a paper trail, if it ever comes up.
Yeah,
in 2
because
years.
paper is a
I mean,
little.
Probably not the best method, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right,
But
I mean,
I think they're working with what they've got, with their company.
Yeah, and they're just not technological people, so I think we can somehow offer them, I don't know how. but-
Well, let's find what they have.
Yeah.
And then we can figure out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a question. Mr.
Legal paper
Harbor
ripout?
I don't hear what you said, Keith?
here's a
Master. I said I have a
question.
question, Mr. Harbor Master.
Okay.
How come we don't get communicated with this stuff anymore? Like, he's there presenting tonight, and I don't know anything about it. I haven't heard anything about it in our past meetings. I mean, he said, yeah, I'm working on the marina. Well, all of a sudden, we're to the engineering stage, and he's presenting with 2 other people at 9 o'clock at the selectmen's meeting, and we don't know anything.
This is,
So what happened to the harbor master's report that used to give us details of what's going on in the harbor and what things we need to know as
In
well?
his absence, we don't want to say too much about it.
I know.
I agree. I think we should know more about, what is transpiring with the harbor master and projects that are going on.
my belief, because I spoke to him generally about this, is that this is just for the contract for the
Yeah,
engineer.
but see, we used to know that stuff.
No, but I
We
mean,
were
he's
presented
been,
with all that stuff, and we knew what was going on. Now we really don't.
the other thing is that our scheduled meeting would have predated this meeting, would have predated him going to town hall. So, I mean, I think he should provide more transparency, but remember that we didn't have this meeting because it was 4th of July week, we're having it on a weird night, he's trying to do his thing, so.
Even so, I'm wondering if there's like a, just to get him in the, he's very off the cuff, you know what I mean? When he comes in, this is what's going on. I wonder if we should give him bullet points of what we'd like him to report on.
We can do that, absolutely.
Something like that, so it's almost like a report that he can just go by. All right, one, how's money coming in? You know, how's it compared to last year?
Well, maybe if we gave him some bullet points before the meeting,
Right.
so he would come.
Given the week before.
But each meeting, it should be the same, at least the same topics, I guess.
I don't really advocate ambush.
Right.
No.
No, we shouldn't
No,
really
no.
be talking behind his back. It
No.
was just a general question.
Yeah.
Maybe we can pose it
And I
again and say.
agree.
No, and
a
I
little more
think
transparent.
that's general too, because I think that we can also take off some of the things where there tends to be no action items that seem to appear, they appear on the agenda every month, and yet there's no real action on them.
Yeah, so maybe make a suggestion that a week before the meeting, you send, Fran, if you have a bullet point or an item you'd like to be updated on the harbor master's report, you send it to Fran. Fran compiles it and gives it to Stephen, so he has a week to prepare, whether it's,
I have no problem with that. We usually Kelly will put our agenda in on Friday prior to the meeting. But in most cases, if anybody has anything to ask me, or we put them in, we don't get them until Thursday night or Friday morning.
No, but-
I can also amend the agenda once it's posted, but I have to have it 48 hours prior to the meeting.
I don't think we're talking
This is
about
my-
changing the agenda. I think we're talking about specific bullet points
Right, and what I'm saying is
that
we
we'd like
need to get
answered.
information
Is that-
ahead of time,
Right.
ahead of our putting it on the agenda, that's all.
No, I mean, you did this one's remarkably different because we have basically a single speaker, but I mean, the traditional agenda could be from 3.5 years ago. I mean, it's not drilled down, and that has nothing to do with Steve, because he wasn't even.
Or Kelly, because.
Right, yeah, but neither of them were, neither were.
If you want, I'll talk to Steve and try to give him some guidance on kind of what we'd like him to have. Because one thing that he's missing is he doesn't remember when Mark used to give a pretty in-depth rundown of what was going on in the harbor and then the different projects, and he had it kind of spelled out. But Stephen was really never here to see any of that, so maybe just a little bit of guidance on,
Yeah.
hey, here's what
No,
was typically discussed.
I mean, his
right?
number 2 did a great job when he was in his
Yeah,
absence.
just give him some talking points to talk and say that this is what the group's kind of looking for
He
and help them with
assumes
it. so.
sometimes that we know a lot of things that we don't.
Yeah, significant things that happen in the harbor. you know.
Yeah.
Because he's dealing with them every day.
Right.
So I'd be happy to sit with them and go through some stuff and just give them some, hey, anything like this coming up, we'd like to just get
You
a
want to
heads
do
up
that?
on.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
And I think we should email Mike, you know, ideas that any of us have.
Okay.
Each,
please do, yeah.
Okay. Does that help you?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Okay, Brian, I'm going to kind of go over to you and fill Brian out and introduce our guest.
Sure, so we have Jack Wigan from the Urban Institute at UMass Boston, and Jack has been involved in, by far, the majority of the waterways plans in the greater area. He completed the Marshfield plan not too long ago and is currently working on an update to the Provincetown plan. So Brian and I had a conference call with Jack 2 days ago and asked a series of questions. And if you'd like, I'll just cut right into it because I think they're probably going to be redundant to some of the questions that we may have. And so before I introduce Jack and let him do his thing, some of the questions we asked is a rewrite versus an update. And in the brief glance that Jack had taken a look at our document, he felt that it was pretty comprehensive and an update would be a good idea. We asked him whether or not there's grants available, and he said yes if you tie it to a capital project. Not putting your words in your mouth, correct?
Yep,
Okay.
sounds good so far.
So with that, what I'd like to do is introduce Jack, let him talk a little bit about the waterways plans that he's been involved in.
Yep.
And then circle up on the Provincetown rewrite.
Sure.
Okay?
Yep.
Well, thank you, Jack.
Thanks for inviting me. The Urban Harbors Institute is a research institute at UMass Boston. We've been in existence since 1989, so about 27 years. What our charge was when we were created was to do public policy and management and planning related work as it has to do with the marine and coastal environment. We kind of grew out of the Boston Harbor cleanup. A lot of the scientists at UMass Boston, as well as the other institutions around Boston, were involved in the science and technical parts of the harbor cleanup. And I think one of the judges, I think it was Garrity, made the comment was, there's plenty of people in the technical side, but nobody on the public policy side of how these decisions are made. Who's going to pay for this and all that kind of stuff. So somebody in the legislature proposed our institute to be created, and that's really how we got started. We did a lot of water transportation work, ferry kind of things at the beginning, and then eventually evolved into harbor planning. I came out of the coastal management program in Connecticut. I wrote the legislation for harbor planning for that state, so it was kind of a natural thing. I'm an urban planner by background. I teach in the graduate program of planning at UMass. So the planning piece of it is something that I was quite familiar with. Massachusetts has had a harbor planning opportunity for 25 years or so. Coastal zone management is where the regulations come out of. Has a lot to do with, the state's idea of a harbor plan has a lot to do with Chapter 91 licensing. So DEP, their sister agency, issues those Chapter 91 licensing for any activity in, below mean high water, and harbor plans in the coastal zone management's point of view is to inform that decision-making process. That's why they wrote the regulations they did. But obviously, if a municipality is going to do a harbor plan, it's going to address the issues that the community thinks is important. And how that two things tied together is what DEP was looking for, was a way for the community to let them know how they wanted to be making their licensing decisions. Obviously, they're bracketed by laws and regulations and how they do that, but there's a lot of flexibility in those decisions, and they wanted to hear from the towns how they should be making their decisions, whether it should be public access, whether a dock should be shorter than it was, or whatever the issues might be. But most of the harbor plans that we get involved in have to do with things other than Chapter 91. And so I'll use Scituate as an example. I haven't heard you have a lot of Chapter 91 issues. You don't have Commonwealth tidelands here in the same sense that Provincetown has them, and I'll go into that in a moment. So really the Chapter 91 here is licenses for structures below mean high water, and I think on your waterfront, like Cole Parkway and stuff, that's all Chapter 91 jurisdiction, so that would require licensing too. But compared to Boston or to a province town, Chapter 91 on the land side is not a big issue. So your Chapter 91 licensing is typical stuff that DEP does all the time. But there are lots of other issues. You know, you've got a pile of recreational boats here, you've got a commercial fishery here, a very active and lucrative, I think, waterfront. There's natural resources all around that must be impacted by human development and that kind of things. And those are the water quality issues. Those are the kinds of things a lot of municipal harbor plans actually focus on. So whenever I go into a community and they ask the questions that you were asking, Brian, yesterday, was that if you're going to consider a plan, the idea would be that you'd have a reason for doing that, whether it's a new plan or an updated plan. In other words, we're confronted with this host of issues that we really don't have a rational way of going about over the long term of making decisions about that. And that's why towns do them. In the case of Scituate, you've got a plan. It's a solid plan. Some years have passed, so the question becomes, are the recommendations in the plan relevant to what you're thinking about these days, or have they been done, or are they not? Too much time has passed; they're not actually relevant anymore. New issues have come up that wasn't contemplated at that time that we don't have an answer for. Whatever it might be, those are the reasons why you might do it. I did look at the existing harbor plan done in 2011. And it tracks very closely the Provincetown Harbor Plan. The organization is the same, the language is the same, and that's all fine. When you come to the recommendations section, obviously that's much more oriented to exactly what was happening in Scituate. And going through the recommendations, and I don't know what the status of any of these things are, but if I were you thinking about it, that's where I would start. Does the plan have any day-to-day purpose now? In other words, when you meet, do you say, let's take a look at what it is that the plan is suggesting was our short-term, medium-term, long-term recommendations? I mean, are we doing those? Should we be doing those? Is there something else that we should be doing? Or is the agenda set by issues that are popping up, on a weekly or a monthly basis? So that's really how I would think about it, whether you need one or not. The other questions you guys asked yesterday were, wouldn't it help us with grant opportunities? And it certainly would. The Seaport Economic Council, for one, asked that question. I would imagine any of the other the Commonwealth of Massachusetts grant programs would ask that question too. They always ask if you're there's some language that I think started up in a prior administration. I forget what they called it, community partner or something like that, which means you have a comp plan, a housing production plan, harbor plan, all those kinds of things. So I would imagine the answer to that would be yes. For state level grants, it surely would help you. Other grants, whether at the federal level, that's generally dredging or some Corps of Engineers related project, it might do that too. And then I don't know if you go with foundation kinds of grants, but in those cases, it's not so much that the grantor is looking for that, which the state would be. It would be whether you can suggest to them that the project that you're looking for funding for is based on some rational process that you've got there, and you go, this is not, we didn't just make this up, it didn't drop from the sky. It was the result of a community process where we looked at what our needs were, and the community decided that these are the directions we should go in. So that's by way of introduction.
Interesting. You've had a chance to look at ours?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think what we're really looking at is updating.
Yeah, definitely.
And, I think we're looking at some guidance, I think, from you to, should we look at someone like yourself or like the urban harbors, or is it something we can do in-house ourselves?
You could do it either way. Again, I would go back to what's the level of complexity of the issues that you want to take on. If you get into Chapter 91 and you were really going to do something creative with it, you'd probably want to bring somebody in who understood that. And the other person I suggest you talk to is Jason Burtner, the CZM's regional coordinator. He could give you some advice and guidance too. Yeah. So, yeah, and he's great. So you should definitely take advantage of him. If it were a straight update and you felt comfortable running a public process, you know, inviting people in at public meetings and saying, this is what we're doing, we'd like to hear from you, the boating public or the commercial fishermen or the general public, you know, what do you think we should be doing? What's the harbor need? What's working right? What's not working right? And then take that information and translate that into an action agenda, then you could probably do it yourself. Some communities don't like to run that process. They'd rather have somebody coming in and walking them through. How it usually works is the committees that we work with are probably the members of the committee are capable from a knowledge point of view of doing it. What they don't have is the time or the inclination to do it. You've got to run the process. You've got to make note of things. You've got to be aware of what the regulations are at the state and federal level, depending on the issue. Maybe you don't have to know those at all if the issue doesn't cross those bounds. You have to know, the new issue these days is climate change. The town had a vulnerability assessment done. If I were going to do a harbor plan here, I'd probably want to bring in some of that information because it is going to affect the harbor over time, over the long term, but still, communities are beginning to think about that kind of thing. So there are new issues that have cropped up since 2011 that probably you would want to fold into the plan. So I'm not sure if I answered your question or not. It depends. It depends, I think, on the nature of the issues that you're going to do.
Well, I think on future issues, we're looking at dredging. We'll kind of get knocked back a little bit on our jetty repair because we're not in the right position. We don't really need it,
Right.
but we feel we will in the future.
Right.
So we're looking at future grants, future opportunities to maintain the infrastructure in the harbor and do the things we
Yeah, it's more purely of a planning nature than a reactive nature, which is what we should be doing.
Yeah.
And we actually had incidents where we self-managed a process over last year, and I would think that everybody in this committee would agree that hiring a professional to manage it is probably better than.
Honestly, most towns do. Situate's probably one of the very few I'm aware of that did it yourself. But again, you track the P-Town plan pretty closely, so that was.
We slogged through.
I'm sorry?
We slogged through regulations and all last year, and we tried to do it, and obviously with the time that we have to do it at these meetings, and with all the input that we had, when the town kind of took it over and gave it to consultants, it worked a lot better, a lot more efficiently.
Yeah. Some of the things the Provincetown town manager asked us when we started was they wanted to make sure, there was a couple of things. They wanted to look at fee structure. I think I told you guys this yesterday. They wanted to look at administrative organization of the community as it had to do with the waterfront. And they wanted to make sure that we were looking at other communities' harbor plans, because if there was a town that had the same issue that Provincetown had, they wanted to know what the range of alternatives were for addressing it. So the latter one, we're in good position to do that because we've done so many of them, or I've looked at the other ones that have been done. So that's pretty easy for us to do. I think you guys were asking the time frame of it. You're doing an update, so a year would probably be the outside limit of what it would take. I mean, I was saying to these guys, you can't underestimate the public process part of it. Takes a month or two to sort of get up to speed so that you're ready to go in front of the public and say, this is what we're going to do, and this is the time frame, and this is what we're looking for from you. And then you have got to run that process out. People feel it. They come in, give some initial comments, then they want to see what you did with it, and then they want to see how you changed it after they told you what you did with it wasn't exactly right. So it's hard to do it in a much more compressed time frame than that.
So one of the other questions that we asked Jack was to give us a range for an out-of-date plan. He said, I believe that you said that it was 10 years would be considered out of date, Provincetown is committing to try to do it every 5 years, an update. Fair enough?
Yep. Yeah, so when cesium started with it, 10 years was, 5 years was the typical time period. And again, that had to do with state approval. And so they felt comfortable allowing the town to give them guidance for a period of about 5 years. And then I think they were believed that at 5 years, you really needed to revisit that because they were going to make their decisions consistent with what was in that plan. And I think they felt 5 years might be enough of a learning curve so that it might be time to go back and revisit that. A lot of towns don't do state approval, so that's not terribly relevant. You can set whatever planning horizon you want to. For planning, as general planning like a master planner, 5 years is pretty short because you got to start again once you're done. It's like running for office, you know. So 10 years is a pretty realistic thing. Communities that do a lot of planning might do it more frequently but I think for harbor plan, 10 years is probably right.
Okay.
And so the answer to the question was, I didn't think your plan on a date basis would necessarily suggested that it was beyond a reasonable time. It depends on what the plan says, and depends on what it is that you're doing now. And if the plan's still relevant to what you're doing now, then maybe you don't.
What
need
we're
it.
planning, I mean, what the next big projects may be.
Right. So if the stuff that's in here is not being done and isn't going to be done, or has already been done, then that would suggest to me whether the plan needed to be done again, because there's nothing here that this current committee is interested in doing. But if it did, if you were still working through the agenda, then you go another few years. So in terms of, the specific question then, as it has to do with grants, is I was suggesting that the SEC, for example, would ask you, if you had a harbor plan, they'd ask you what the year it was. But I don't think that would hurt you at this point in time.
Where'd we get the grant for the pilings? Where'd that come from?
Seaport.
Seaport, right, so we just got a $1,000 grant for that.
So, and yeah, I mean, it doesn't, that's not to suggest that they wouldn't, or couldn't give a town a grant that didn't have a harbor plan. It's just a question that they ask you. I mean, I think they feel comfortable.
We were told you look better.
You look better, and that really is the answer. If there was a big need and it aligned well with the Seaport Economic Council's viewpoint at that time, they would fund it. I think that the key is the thing that you would want to approach them with for money, is it in the plan? You know, or are you now you're just wildly shooting at stuff? And you would like to think that the thing that you're pursuing now is based on some thought.
Right. So I think a lot of the things that we are thinking about, the filings of redoing the Marina Eco Parkway and other things are not adequately addressed in the current plan, but I think we all agree that that's what we need to do to move forward. I mean, I don't think the chain and anchor is the way to keep that marina.
That is correct, Joe.
And I looked to see if the town had a updated master plan, and I don't think you do. I think it was 2003 or 4. So, because sometimes a master plan, while it doesn't focus on the waterfront, would have something to say about what particularly the commercial area and the waterfront. But if it is, that's not really up.
Does it even say anything, the current master plan about the waterfront?
I don't know. All I know is it's older than the harbor plan, so I didn't bother looking any further.
Harbor plan is more current than the.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder if it even mentions the waterfront. Interesting.
I'm sure it mentions it.
Yeah.
You mentioned there was a state aspect, is it some address the state aspect as opposed to not the state, what's that?
Whether to go to state approval?
Yes.
Yeah, we've done them. We've done them for towns that really, like Marshfield.
See, Keith.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Marshfield wanted to do a state-approved harbor plan, but there wasn't a real reason for doing it. They didn't have a lot of Chapter 91 issues, and that's really the relationship. I mean, frankly, the state has told us that if the town doesn't need state approval, then they wouldn't suggest pushing it. But it's choice. Marshfield wanted to do state approval because they kind of wanted that imprimatur, that the state also, beside the Board of Selectmen, however you do it, the state also approved it. And the state's happy to do that. It's just that they we wouldn't suggest that we push it on anybody, that they do it. All it is a little bit of extra attention to some areas having to do with Chapter 91, and then there's some, there's an approval document at the end that has to be prepared, but it's paperwork.
Okay, I know one of the things that keeps coming up is what would the actual, what would projected cost of something like this be?
Yeah.
An update, not a total rewrite.
Yeah, not a total rewrite, but
Yeah.
an
An
update, refreshing of the whole.
I think,
Yeah.
so I think, not to put words in your mouth, but Jack hasn't done a deep dive on it, but if he compared it to Provincetown,
Mhm.
since our documents are similar and timeframes are similar,
Mhm. Yeah, we're doing the updated for 29,000 in Provincetown. And that's probably about right.
It seems to be less than what kind of quotes that I was getting from people.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, if we
better way
do
to help an
what-
RFP process.
typically, because I'm one of the reviewers for the SEC grants, the harbor plans are coming through at 80 or 100.
Yes.
That's the proposal. But that means that the town might be keeping 20 for its administrative costs and then passing on some amount less than that. Beverly's is out now, and I think they have, it's for 100. I think Dartmouth is putting in for 80 or 100, something like that. So the number looks more like that.
So then I take it you people are pretty busy with doing these studies.
Now, we always have a bunch of things going. There's 6 of us there. I'm the director, but there's...
So there's 6, the whole Urban Institute is 6 people.
Yep.
Okay.
And four of us do the work, and then we have a couple of support staff.
And it's not full-time, it's, you're a professor, you said.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, no, this is full-time for
It
me.
is,
Yeah, it's the teaching that ends up
Okay.
being...
Teaching's at the part-time side.
Our graduate program's late afternoon, evening graduate program for
Excellent.
students, yeah. So, what else can I add? Yeah, so we're always doing 1 or 2 of them, as well as other things.
What type of a lead time would one need to engage, letter of engagement? In other words, 2 months, 3 months, 6
No,
months?
It depends on how with towns, we try to, depends on what the situation is. Municipalities have a contract form that they usually use for state agencies, so I have many examples of it, and it takes however long it takes to process a contract.
Right, so they're a public agency, not private?
Right, so they're already on a fee schedule, like a...
So we don't need to bid this out.
Right.
Yeah,
Jack?
I always get
No,
that question.
I meant more personally, like,
Yeah, yeah.
if we went through our druthers
Right.
and then sent it, and approving you in this process, and we sent it upstream, and they said yes, and it came back, when?
Would you start?
Would you
We would
start?
start whenever you wanted to. We'll often start before the contracts are signed, assuming that, because you would have to do it through your administrator, right, Board of Selectmen, and
Yeah.
then we have our own process, none of which takes
Oh.
a ridiculously long time. But once it's in process, I mean, we start talking about when the town wants
We
to
have
do it.
We have an interesting sort of schedule here, so between now and then, we typically don't have an August meeting. But I think it would be something to try to decide what direction we were going by the September meeting, because that starts the full year cycle that we have in town.
And some communities, you're probably right on the cusp, so some communities have a big summer population and they want to either avoid them or engage them.
No. This committee is primarily made up of maritime professionals,
Yeah,
and we're just not available during
yeah,
the height of the season.
yeah. No,
Right.
yeah, most places are like that. Province sounds very much like that. When we did Nantucket was very much like that too.
Yeah.
So,
I got a quick question. So I wasn't here for the last time it was written. I don't think many of us were, but what is the process to do an update? What does it typically entail, the process itself, as far as?
pretty much the same as doing a full plan, except that what you bring the public in for is to help you identify what the issues are
Yeah.
to be done, and to learn things, because people will be able to tell you things that you don't know. And then And then basically that process is for them to make sure that the community and any stakeholders, anybody who's involved in the harbor is aware of what the recommendations are and they can comment on it and vet it. And so by the time you get done, the key to really the purpose of the process is so that when you get done, you've got a plan that the community bought into.
Yeah.
And so therefore, there's no pushback at that
Yeah,
point. And
right.
we really kind of press that point
Sure.
to people. It's not because anybody's suggesting that this is the way to do planning, although it is the way to do planning. It's really because ultimately, your goal is to implement the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're building the buy-in as you go along. And that's kind of important. Because you don't really want to start that at the end of the process, you know.
No.
Okay, now we've got to get people on board to these great ideas that we came up with on our own.
But do you get a lot of feedback on things for us to contemplate that other harbors are looking at, or key areas that we should be kind of honing in on?
Sure,
You do?
sure.
Yeah.
You know more than than you might think you know
Yeah.
about what the conditions are, whether there's a water quality issue here, or there's a problem with shellfish health or something like that. And you know, that's typically a community like Marshville, for example, wants to build out its aquaculture a
Right.
little bit more than it is today.
Yeah.
So we begin to focus on that. So it's really
Yeah.
driven by what it
Yeah,
is
we share
that people
that.
want to
Yeah.
have to do. So sometimes water quality is not an issue at all, so we spend very little time on it. Sometimes it's they're trying to get more moorings in an area.
Maximize it.
Yeah.
Dredging is a big one. That's a
Yeah.
long-term issue, but you
Yeah.
got to start somewhere. So you got to begin to build the case for you being in line for dredging money when it becomes available.
Right.
That kind of thing. There's all different kinds of things. As I was saying before, and I saw it in the Scituate plan, is that in Provincetown, for example, Chapter 91 is huge because, for reasons we don't have to go into, most of the tidelands, the Chapter 91 jurisdiction of Provincetown is actually Commonwealth tidelands, which is the case below mean high water here, which means the Commonwealth has all of the ownership rights to it. All of Provincetown's downtown is built on Commonwealth tidelands, so that's a problem for regulators, because it's all there, so what are you going to do about it? So the plan really was to address the fact that a lot of that development was unlicensed, and it needed to be licensed, according to DEP. And the plan was the path to getting that stuff licensed. So they weren't going to tear anything down, but they said, all right, you're on Commonwealth tidelands. What we would like to see happen here is public access through or across your property, because it was Commonwealth tidelands. So it was sort of inserting things into an existing pattern of development that would allow DEP, as the trustee for the public on these tidelands, to get what it typically done. If that was undeveloped land, nothing would happen on it because the Commonwealth wouldn't have allowed it. So there was a big focus on Chapter 91 in Provincetown. You don't need that kind of focus here. You don't have that same issue. And so when I looked through this, you were talking about Commonwealth tidelands in here, and you could really get rid of that because it's a distraction. In other words, if I was looking at it, your plan probably wants to be much more focused on the situation here and what it is that you want to try to do. And so people don't have to read through page after page.
Right, and
about
that's
Chapter
probably
91.
because Provincetown was used as a model.
Yes.
So Provincetown was used as a model, and they.
And we use the
Exactly.
model,
And-
obviously.
and
There's probably 40 pages of
And there's
fluff.
nothing
boy, is it
wrong with
painful.
that. It's all accurate. It's completely fine. It's just not hugely relevant to the degree that it's
It
in.
doesn't matter what's happening in Hanover if we're talking about.
Like,
It sounds like what we need to do is look at the recommendations
correct.
in the existing plan, because we're not way out of date. It's not a 17-year-old plan, it's a 6 or 7-year-old plan. And see if the recommendations that are there are still relevant or not, and to get a sense of timing. Maybe we don't, we were told, we need to update this plan. That was the mission that we were given. We need to update this plan.
A couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago, right.
Right.
So what we're hearing from an expert is that maybe it's not so out of date if the current list of suggestions are relatively relevant.
Yeah.
And whether we go through it ourselves or not, and we got, a couple of us sort of did a cursory look at what it would take to do it ourselves, and we were frightened by the amount of technical information in there. And so, I think one of the major reasons you're here is that if we're gonna do this thing again, we need an expert, because we can't update that technical
No.
information. We have no way of even accessing that.
My other fear in Scituate is, yes, maybe 6 or 7 years, but if it takes a year.
Or two, right.
Or two, it always needs to
Yeah,
take a
6
little.
months to get it
a little
approved, and then
extra.
a couple of months. So,
Right.
if we said
It always seems to take,
right now,
people are
a
very
year,
careful.
but if it
You
happens,
need- You need to get it in the budget, and
yeah.
and then you should, the Waterways Commission should have at least an outline of some ideas that they should want to pursue, and then bring the public in and get
Right.
obviously more
Yeah.
input. But yeah, no, it's something we should look at now, and maybe it's a year or two out.
Yeah,
And then maybe look back at the existing one and just try to figure out
Yeah.
what's still on there that
Yeah.
needs to stay, right? And
Right.
then what else is new, dredging, watercolor, aquaculture, whatever.
yeah.
As well as what's been completed and falls off,
Yeah,
Right.
right?
Well, the other thing is just highlight things that are important now and provide less emphasis to things such as the,
But it's good news to hear that we're not way out of date.
No, but the other thing I would say though is, right, we know we have significant dredging stuff coming up, right? It's going to be ongoing all the time.
you do have a change in your 911 license when you change, when you put in the pilings. You do other things first.
But are we looking at large issues? We're not looking at, we're looking at public access and these are big ideas, not day-to-day. I mean, chapter 91,
That's right.
adding
Yeah.
pilings
Yeah.
to a marina, that's
Yeah.
something done in the license. I would say that's covered under the grant. By the time we get the plan written, that's gonna be driven and sitting pretty.
You know why towns do the harbor plan? Because you have the opportunity to modify the state's regulations through a harbor plan. But those potential modifications may not be important to you. It's like building heights of 55 feet within 100 feet of the waterfront. You may not even allow that now under your zoning, so that wouldn't be terribly useful to you. Reduce the 50% open space requirement on tidelands. That may not be important to you. Boston, it's hugely important. That's why Boston does them. Then that's really probably one of the, we did a little bit of that in Gloucester too. We amended the waterways regulations in Gloucester. But that's more of a built-up place than Scituate is. Now, I would say that if dredging was going to become the big issue, you would want to be documenting the economic value of those things that depend on navigable waterways. The value of the fishing, the fact that it's commercial fishing, the fact that it's growing, recreational boating, recreational fishing, anything that depends on for its survival on navigable waterways, you want to document the economic value of that because
In the plan.
in the plan. Because then when you go, dredging money becomes available, you put your proposal in, you've already made the argument, and this is why you need it. Yeah. So that kind of thing, that's where it becomes useful. So again, it all depends on what it is that you need it for. That's where I would put my effort in. And the seawall, or a breakwater,
Jetty out front.
the jetty, that's something too, that you would want to document that as best you can. So just so that you're be able to present the information that's going to be required when you go to do it. And the fact that you did it through a planning process unrelated to that particular grant program is helpful too.
Jack, what about upgrading docks? Would that be considered a grantable action?
Public?
These are
Publicly owned.
This is
Publicly
public
owned.
docks right out front here,
Yeah.
town docks,
Yeah.
marina.
Yeah,
It is.
put stuff in like that all the time.
Because that's in our capital plan, Franny, going out like 3 years. Right?
And you could, towns usually have a pretty good handle on licensing and permitting for docks and stuff. But again, if your plan shows we need this, want to do this expansion in this particular area of plan, the DEP will be looking at your plan and saying, all right, this is what they've been contemplating.
I think it's less of an expansion and more of a replacement.
Replacement. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably what Brian was calling a sort of a day-to-day kind of decision.
Yeah, just, I read through this plan a while ago. Keep in mind too, we have 4 other waterways besides the harbor.
Right.
And so we tend to kind of think of the harbor as right here, but we've got the Gulf River, we've got the North River, South River, Huron River. Those are all access points, public access. And I think in that report, if I read, it was talking about trying to improve that type of stuff. So it does go out quite a bit when you really start reading into it, so
Right, I mean,
keep that in mind.
A lot of this, 90% of our discussion is in the harbor, but
Right.
we have trust over all the rivers and all the things in the town. So we
Right,
need
and
to-
some of those are shared with other towns, so
Right.
it's a bigger than just Scituate Harbor. As a commercial fleet, as that changes, the boats are getting bigger because they're having them, you know, for whatever reason, everybody has to get their gear out now because they close, so it's 3 boatloads a year in versus 12 of the smaller boats, and now they're drawing more water, they're running aground now in the harbor. So all those things they all connect, you know, and it's good to keep an eye on all of that.
That's a great point, actually. Because I remember when we were doing Marshfield, we were in communication with you guys up on the North and South, North River line.
Right.
About shared jurisdiction on dredging and stuff. So that's actually a really good point.
Yeah, I don't know that it adequately represents our interests and all, because we do talk a lot about the new inlet and other places that should be incorporated into that.
But sometimes that's a good example of an issue. Sometimes it's intermunicipal problems that just can't seem to be resolved. So the plan becomes the forum for 2 communities meeting together and trying to work it out, rather than trying to do it in a regulatory environment.
Excellent.
Any other questions? Friends? Dave, anything else? Anyone else out there?
I just want to thank him for his time.
Right, Jack, thank you very much.
And I don't want to
This is great.
undersell it, I certainly don't want to oversell it, but there's value to having, to actually even engaging in doing a plan. It gets everybody on the committee kind of thinking about stuff. So, I mean, there's value there,
Based on the
intangible value.
time frame that you laid out and the fee structure you discussed, there's a degree of reasonableness that rarely crosses our...
Well, with that expertise and professional.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, I'm not pandering, but I mean, people, I think we spent that on the Wi-Fi initiative.
That failed.
No,
Yeah, you're right.
I printed out a couple of these. These are sort of the latest maps that the state has for historic high water. And so you can see the waterfront in the downtown is pretty much impacted, but otherwise you follow the line around, you get some stuff down here.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's not a huge issue here. You would know better than I, but you know, I noticed that this, we're all pretty close to the water's edge here.
That's where we are, right?
Yeah, we need some big dredging there.
Yeah.
Didn't have.
Yeah. So anyway,
Excellent.
those are a
Great.
couple of my cards. if you're-
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and happy to do this, so if you want to talk.
You want to stay with the South River dredging up here?
which I
Suggest I not.
no, I don't know that. Based on my earlier response, there typically isn't one.
Yeah.
But
We'll
hopefully
see,
we have
we'll
it.
see.
Yeah, no, he's good.
Good. Hey, nice to meet you all. Good luck with this, whatever you decide to do.
Thank you.
Brian, good to see you.
Yeah.
Brian. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's anything below this.
I think what we probably should do is, digest this and think of, talk about it seriously at the September meeting.
Yeah.
So no August, is that what we want to say?
I think maybe, given what Jack told us, maybe we should have an August meeting, so.
Should have one.
Should have an August meeting? Oh, there's no interest? Okay, yeah, no, I guess September's good.
It's a good suggestion, Brian.
What is interesting is that, and again, I don't think anybody in this room has read, maybe Brian closest, page for page, the whole 187 page, whatever, it's document, but.
I have,
Have you?
and it repeats itself so many times.
So much
such
fluff.
Foolish areas.
And the technical
Well,
stuff,
which
like he
is-
said, wasn't even necessary.
Which is one of the problems about doing an update, because it's like pulling a thread. You have to update one area, and then all of a sudden you get 30 pages later, you
Yeah, and
didn't
you-
update
and you
it
don't know
there.
what's
If
important
you
or not.
remember from the mooring regulations, we changed one word in here, we forgot to change
But
one.
see, we also don't know where they were coming from at the time they wrote it too.
That's
So,
right.
It had a lot to do.
The point I was gonna make is we gotta boil it down to a page of bullet pointed recommendations. And what I thought I heard him say was, you need to figure out if your current recommendations are valid or not, are actually relevant for the next couple of years.
Or they
Well,
completely.
you really, what you have to do is you have to look for the next 10 years.
That's
You
right,
have to say, and in that plan, there are some lofty goals.
Right.
And, in some of them, they've done, like the town pier.
Right.
They redid the town pier.
Right.
But I think you have to look at, you have to say, how can we improve public access? Because that's something you can get money for.
Right.
I think you have to look at, is the town pier, utilized fully now, or is there something else we can do with it, in addition to serving the fishing fleet?
Right,
I
there's
think-
no headboats anymore, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah,
There
you
used
have
to
to,
be.
you have to kind of look around and say, what can we do to improve the harbor, in a lofty goal,
Right.
Do we, want to improve the maritime center?
Those things may be in there to a large degree.
But I think,
These next
we're-
set of 10 years worth of goals, I don't know.
But I think we have a year or two now to find
Yeah.
out. We have a year or two to figure it out.
Right, right.
I think you have to request funding. That takes time. You have to come up with kind of some outlines of things you want to go after. And then, and then I think then you get the public involved and see what the public has to say. I mean, obviously, if you open this up, the public will come to the meetings because they're interested. They're very interested.
All two of them.
Crowd goes wild.
Today,
Dave and I are very concerned citizens from Norwell.
but but I mean, obviously, with the mooring regulations, people are very interested.
Right.
And so I think it shows that you can, I mean, if we continue to move our meetings around, we'll have the next meeting is going to be Thursday morning at 9 a.m. and-
Right.
Yeah, the gridding
No,
issue would be a big one.
it's not, it's
Maximizing.
Right. Anything that impacts the people will obviously get the draw, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's great to have him in. I think that was an awesome
Yeah, and I have a much better
report.
understanding of how it's used now, because now it really makes sense. It's like, the things that are in your plan that you're working on get supported, right?
Right.
Right.
So,
If you come up
it's
with,
not so much the data.
maybe one of the reasons that they
Well.
supported this new piling project was the 5-year-old plan that was proposed, that was in the plan when that got requested. So that might have been one of the major reasons we got that grant.
But it's also nice to see that there was something in the plan, the town pier. It was completed.
Yeah,
Right.
We can remove it
and the ramp,
And-
the
and-
ramp.
And the ramp.
and
Right.
create something new to focus on, whether it's a lofty goal or an achievable goal or
Well, I think an example of a lofty goal is the harbor walk, and I know that's in the plan, and that was, I think, it's not, I mean, I think John Murphy had some loftier
Yeah.
goals, but I think it's fabulous what he's done, or what, the committee has done, setting that, and I think it's great. So I think there's a lot of things in the plan that they achieved, and that's why I think, but who 15 years ago, if you said, oh, we're going to do a harbor walk, I would have said, what? So I think that's the kind of public access thing that you want to focus on, whether it's more, kayak launches down in the rivers, or whether it's,
should we any of opportunity for looking at the, spoken to Mike DeMeo about, what we call the anthill over by the pits, and why hasn't that been developed into a more relevant water access point versus, say, the harbor? And there's 3, we get several boat launches, not just the main one.
Or maybe a paved path out to like Doff Tucket or something like that.
Yeah.
But
people.
these are all ideas that I think we should
Yeah,
float.
we could pay for the pilings and stuff.
Excellent, good job having them in, Brian.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Okay,
South River
anything
Dredging.
else you want to talk about regardless of the harbor study?
No, I think we've,
That was good.
Yeah.
Brian, can I ask you about the South River?
I did get a brief update from Nancy Durfee, so,
who's speaking tonight, correct?
at the town hall.
At Board of Selectmen
Oh,
meeting.
yeah.
She was on right
About
before
this-
Steve.
About this South River Dredge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So her update is, we're waiting on determination from the Army Corps of Engineers and DEP on 2 of the samples that could need further testing, and of course, their final permission to dredge. So they need to clear up that sampling. So that's what, it sounds like they're making progress, and they have a couple questionable samples. So that's what you get.
Do we know if the Air Force agreed to be the backup for the spoils if the number of residents didn't give?
I believe the Air Force is backed out of that.
Yeah, no, the last meeting, he said that the guy said he wasn't interested.
And not interested. So if, the issue is if we don't get enough of the easement okays, we have to, take it out to Gloucester or something?
There's some pending items, the Air Force might be moving out of there, and the town is also looking at that idea too. You know, what's going to become of the end of Pomeroy
When did you hear that the Air Force might be moving out?
2 weeks ago. Might be.
From a,
It's been going on for a while, this is a pretty credible source.
It's on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, as it shrinks, it becomes less relevant, so they don't necessarily want
they're probably looking at maintaining, I mean, I was down there today, and I mean, the cliff, their portion of the cliff, you can just see how much it's eroded from rain and wind.
Yep.
And they're probably looking at how we're gonna maintain this over, is it worth it to us to do it?
And all that material is coming into the river.
Right,
I mean,
right.
So it's kind of a fueling.
Push it
rod.
back.
Right.
Seems though they've done some patchwork lower on the cliff. Didn't they cover up the cave that was there?
I think they probably, a little bit, I mean,
Yeah.
you could still, a kid could climb in.
Okay.
I mean, they did put some material in front of it.
There's a cave there.
Well, probably 5-6 feet deep or something.
Mm.
But I mean, it's definitely, it's a safety hazard for a child going in there and
Yeah.
if there was ever a cave in.
Mhm.
But it's just, I mean, the whole thing looks, if you look at where people, the private part have put up riprap and cement, but you look and there's some parts of it there's some vegetation on it and that's held. And why the Air Force, 20 years ago didn't at least start to do a little, trying to do some planting of vegetation just to maintain it. But the fact that they just let it go is sad. And, if they're not gonna maintain it, they should return it to, is it the town that returned it to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think Sean Harrison alluded to the whole idea at one of our last meetings too.
Yes.
I thought that was vague.
No, I mean, that was the precursor of what I heard.
But back to the South River, the issue is right now, it sounds like the testing of the spoils,
Yes.
but no update on the easements. But they're out there, every resident has an easement letter, I think.
Yeah, it was my understanding from Nancy.
I know they've probably already researched all this, but what are the other alternatives?
Well, I think she said, correct me if I'm wrong, but they had enough access to do it, but it would be better the more access they had, so they could spread the spoils out more instead of having the high and low spot,
I don't know how many she had back. I haven't heard
Yeah.
a report of,
Wasn't that something that was in her?
6 months ago, they were still talking about the lettering on the actual easement agreement.
Yeah.
So that was about 6 months ago, I think, over the winter anyway. So I think they have the letters
Yeah,
that sent.
I'm pretty sure I read she felt like they had enough people that seemed to be interested in doing easements that they could do it, right? But they're hoping to get more because they want to be able to spread it out more. I think that's.
So is the issue contiguous, or is it?
I think they
Yeah.
needed a certain amount of
Quantity?
contiguous.
Yeah.
You could have one.
Percentage of contiguous people.
Right.
Yeah, you can't have them lumped up in one.
What are the alternatives to spreading on the beach?
Dumping it offshore.
Well, no, or find another spot
So I
nearby.
think Mike DeMayo
Mine.
proposes selling it.
You mentioned private study.
Yeah.
Anybody have an update on mine at that project? When the sand's coming in?
I just heard about it the other week. I didn't
I think that's like
Yeah.
imminent.
I
Like,
thought, sorry, I may have heard like 2 years. I thought that came up with the advisory committee,
On the
that
financial.
it's not gonna start for 2 years?
something about 2 years.
That money's been approved though, I think.
I just remember CPC talking, or I think the CPC was talking about it. Advisory, I think,
Yeah.
don't quote me.
Great. Thanks, Brian.
Anything else?
Right.
Any self-report? No?
Not in Sulphur. Not in Sulphur.
No business?
We had a boat sink on Sunday night at the marina, and somebody had put it in the day before, and it looked like a fail seacock or a sea strainer, but I wanted to publicly thank Cito and Mike McDonough, who salvaged the boat at 2 o'clock in the morning, and took it out of the water, so there was no environmental effect. We found the boat underwater at 9:20 p.m., put a containment boom, and Mike hauled it that evening.
How big a boat?
26.
24,
26.
So that's a junk boat now.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
What kind of junk boat you want. If you want to spin run, it's a great spin run.
Yeah.
No, it was completely submerged and no pollution, no environmental impacts, it was good.
Yeah, because we could get it out. I mean,
Yeah.
the surveyor came this morning, and he was very surprised that it occurred on late Sunday night. It was already sitting on stands in
That's great.
my storage area.
So you were involved with that, the harbor master didn't get involved at all in notification or
It
anything?
was completely a private thing, no harbor master, no.
No, we notified.
No, in the morning?
No, we notify them, because of pollution control. And, you know, when we're aware, when an issue arises that affects the public,
You have
good,
to.
we notify them in the safest period of time. I think we have 24 hours, but I mean, we're not gonna stop what we're doing to notify them, but
And was he tied up at one of your slips?
he was tied up on the slip. He had just
Any damage to the slips?
No, the only gunnel went underwater, and we put a rigid hull inflatable on the starboard side to stabilize it until Mike could get there and pump it out.
That's great. That's good, there was no environmental.
Yeah, no fuel, no nothing.
Perfect.
Did they give you one of those kits? You have one of those kits down there that they were giving out, the boom kits?
Who was giving them out?
I'm not sure if the harbor master, several years ago, they gave them to some of the private marinas. It's like
Boat
emergency-
club has one.
Was it?
The boat club has one.
Yeah, and I think Dogger has one.
What do they do? What are-
It's basically a plastic towel about this big, about the size of David Valley.
Yeah.
And it's got oil boom, some rags, containing some gloves, basic things, so if you have somebody at the dock, hey, I spilled 5 gallons of gas in the water, I flipped over, you know.
The yacht club has one of those under the fish cleaners.
Yeah, we have a 50 or 75 foot oil and fuel absorbing containment boom. So anytime, you know, some people overfill their boat, or so every time we see a sheen in the water, we just stick this.
Is that reusable too?
Yeah.
Adsorbent, AD, adsorbent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other new business?
So I just have something I was gonna add to, or comment to Stevens on the harbor master's report, and that was patrols in the river. Marshfield, and I don't know what the story is, I have a call into Mike DeMeo to find out why to see why they're not patrolling the river as they've done in past years. But there seems to be a lot more speeding and going on in the river, especially around dusk when people are trying to get back to the dock. So I just talked to Stephen about it, and he said that they've got a boat down at Damon's Point, and they're trying to do that to slow some people down. And I also just asked him to do it in the South River as well. I think it's a pretty big safety concern. You have people out kayaking and paddleboarding and stuff, and you have people going fast. The whole thing just needs to calm down a little bit.
Marshfield still have a boat up at Rhodes?
I have not seen it up
I
there.
think they did last
You
year.
got a Coast Guard boat there, I think.
No,
No,
that's
that's
private,
Is it?
yeah. You know, like I said, I don't know why Marshfield, if they have an engine trouble, or they cut their budget, but they're not down as much as they have been. So anyway,
And an added thing to that, so has anybody seen, in the Marine Patrol, the cops, are they getting off their boat, walking the spit, now that we're in the full season? Anybody know that?
No, I,
So
Go ahead.
I can comment upon it, so,
Okay.
I was at the spit and saw, 2 undercovers walking around.
right. Chief Stewart has, right, Chief Stewart
And
has
then I
two.
think they call in.
How'd you know
Correct.
they were undercover? You knew the
A
guys.
friend of mine.
She doesn't know.
Yeah,
And then, there was 4 cops on the boat, 2 got off, and I
They
think what
walked.
they do is they arrest them and take them off the boardwalk.
that is correct. They bring them up the boardwalk, they then ask for ID. If they don't have ID, they plastic cuff them, take them in the paddy wagon down to the station. If they do have ID, and they are above drinking age, they get hit with an $80 littering fine.
So that was an incident, but I'm talking
No,
about
no, they're
the
down
patrols.
there. I overlook it. They're
Yeah,
down there every weekend. They send down
Yeah.
1 or 2 undercover, and then it's followed usually with 4 uniformed. They they go down, public meeting too. They know who is. They alert the uniforms come down with the shovels because a lot of these kids are burying their coolers. So they dig the coolers up, and then they march them down the boardwalk. So the trash has been a real problem down there.
yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
pictures
The
of the
Audubon,
trash.
It's been-
the Audubon actually came to the chief and asked him to shut the spit down.
Who came?
Audubon.
Right. No, and I think it goes back to his comment. I've seen, as a marine owner, a lot more utilization of boats and boating, and we're at capacity as the economic cycle improves and more people are on their boat more often.
Yeah,
And so the increased patrols would definitely be,
yeah, absolutely.
Brian, I see the same, I had the same conversation, not seeing anything increased from the way traffic going up to Marine
Mhm.
specifically.
Mhm.
No presence, frustrating at best. Having
Yeah.
a front seat there, and I discussed it with him the other day, so I haven't talked to Michael, but I have not seen a Marshfield Harbor Master boat in the North River.
I've seen our boats there a lot.
Well,
You know,
he used to keep one there. He used to keep one there.
You know, when you say they're there a lot, it's they, you know, and spending a fair amount of time on the river, they come, they look, and they leave.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a boat, you know, sitting there.
Posted there.
dedicated.
And, you know, whether.
That's
or
where
just-
people are.
or
They're
just
either
do-
here or
just
they're
doing
there.
a,
That's
doing
it.
a, you know, like a
milk run.
prolonged patrol of just, you know, just so everybody knows they are
A
around.
solid presence, a consistent,
Joe-
solid presence.
Joe Noble used to sit there all week
Yeah.
long. Joe didn't
He did.
leave the spit.
Really?
He
And
set,
now
he set an anchor out with an
Yeah.
umbrella.
Yeah, he would just sit there, and now I see, you know, I hear on the radio, I listen to the radio, I'll have the radio all the time, but they come up 120 boats, and the next thing you know, they're back in the harbor. And it's not a fault.
So we should bring that
And I
up
see
at the
it-
next
I'm on
meeting.
the river Monday
Yeah,
through Friday,
September.
and people aren't there, because I'm working on the docks and stuff like that. And I see people come to David's house, as soon as they turn the corner of the spit, they're full bore, right out to the mouth of the harbor, right out to the mouth of the river. And they don't even slow down, and same thing coming out of the Herring River, as soon as they get past the launching ramp, they're full bore out to the spit.
That's a lot.
So we should send an email to Steve.
So, no, I talked to him about it,
You
and
did?
he, you know, tonight, and he, you know, he said, oh, he'd put a boat down there, so. I mean,
I brought up a few people, I brought up myself, and he indicated he thought it was adequate patrols, but
yeah, no, I told him, I made a suggestion that it's at, and I honestly think people are like, oh, it's getting dark, but we gotta get back to the dock, and we know there's nobody around, so we can just drop the hammer.
I have noticed the Coast Guard has had a very good presence the past 2 weeks. They've been up there a lot.
Where, at the spit?
At the spit, they went all the way up to, they stopped kids from jumping off the C Street Bridge yesterday. And they were
Really? Wow.
up at, they went all the way up to 3A Bridge on Monday. And they were doing safe boating checks on both those days.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
You know, to Mike and Dave's point, I think there are a lot of, you know, the economy's doing well, there are a lot of new boats out there, you know, you can tell that they're brand new boats, and there are a lot of boaters that, who don't, you know, might not know the rules and who are new to it, so.
that's the other thing too, is there's not many of the old, remember how you used to be able to walk on the 6 mile an hour, no wake
Yeah.
signs.
There's not a sign.
There's not a sign at all. I think the only sign's at your house. Do you have one?
There's a, there's a,
And it's
there's
his,
a,
and it's
there's
your
a,
sign.
there's a sign right past the NR buoy as you go up by the spit. And then there's one between the Bridgeway Marina and South River Yacht Yard. Those are the
Yeah,
signs.
those are the
But
only two.
due to the
But from the
inexperience of some of the
Herring
boaters, they might not be aware.
From the Herring River to
They don't
the,
even know those buoys are there, I can guarantee you.
And there's a guy in the North River who said that he would buy the buoys. He's so fed up with it.
I said to Stephen, I said, if my dock was down, or if I had a boat down at the beginning of the Salt River, I'd be losing my mind the way people go through there.
But I did lose my mind.
Yeah, I mean, you just need, it's frustrating if you're there and some little kid on a 13-wheeler or an inflatable goes by you 10 times on plane, you're like, get the heck out of here, kid. Go for a ride, but stop riding by my boat while I'm trying to, change a fuel filter or
can
something.
we put signs on this, who owns those buoys? The state?
No, those are
red
Marshfield
greens.
and Scituate.
I don't think
The
you
red green.
can.
Red and green, you cannot put anything
You
on.
can't, no, those are Marshfield and
Maintained by
Scituate.
Scituate and Marshfield.
Right.
I don't think you can put a
You
sign.
can't
on.
all-
No, you get all separate ones.
No, you just need to add, just make more speed bumps.
The buoys that are getting a lot of attention in the areas are these shock buoys.
Yeah.
Totally irrelevant to
Yeah.
rivers, but they're getting a lot of
And the
attention.
no wake speed sign is right next to the shark buoy. Because you can see the shark buoy because it's bright yellow. The one at the head of the North River is so faded and old that it's, nobody sees it anymore.
You have to drive fast to get away from the sharks.
I know, well, that's it.
So it might be worth it for you guys to maybe find money to get some more signs or whatever. There's nothing out there anymore.
It's probably a good recommendation is
Yeah.
to talk to Steven about maybe some additional.
But that's
buoys just
September,
to-
the next time we're gonna see Stevens.
Well, I mean, Fran can take it to him.
No, it's not.
I'll bring it to them, sure.
Is there one,
We used to have Peter in Unit 1 and Joe Noble on the river.
Yeah.
And all they did was
And the
sit
little
there
whale.
and they would
Right.
read a book,
Yeah.
and their presence by itself
Yep.
slowed everything down, was enough to make people.
And even the North River Patrol, Joe
Joe
Strauss.
Strauss.
Right.
his boat doesn't even have signs on it anymore. He just rides around. I don't think he's patrolling anymore, is he?
No, he is.
Yeah, I think he is actually.
But he doesn't,
Yeah.
he doesn't have the North River Patrol signs on his boat anymore.
Is he a Marshfield
Yeah, I just
guy?
saw- I just saw him
Where's he
last
at?
week.
He's the North River Watershed Association, I think.
Waterkeeper Joe.
He's the
River
North
Keepers.
River Commission
North River.
Patrol.
Who funds him?
I believe the North River Commission themselves do it.
We don't have any.
It's
So
not a
it's
big,
stipend,
it's a big stipend, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not,
It's a
it's not.
stipend for his gas and stuff like that, so, but
Yeah, he's a teacher in high school.
Yeah.
they know about.
Oh, I am.
They know about the He said he had no authority yet, the other night when I was at a meeting, so I was a little conflicted on that.
And
I think the 6 mile an hour signs have not been painted since I was a kid. Unless anyone would like to debunk, if anyone would like to debunk that, I'm happy to.
Yeah, no, you're probably right.
Is there a sign at the entrance of the harbor now?
Yeah.
Is it just a
It's a
small building?
tiny
small
little
buoy.
sign.
But it's not the
Brad's
classic sign
Brad's
that.
the
got
big,
broken
the big
up.
sign is gone, this is just a
Broke up.
24-inch.
Boom.
Is it 24 inch?
No, it's not, it's 18
And
inches.
it's-
No,
Yeah.
24 inch diameter.
Oh,
It's set,
It
it's,
comes about 3 feet
It-
out.
it-
where is it set? It must be set off the chain.
Behind
Right on the tip of the jetty,
Yeah, it is. It's about
just inside the jetty. That's it.
High tide is underway.
I always used to laugh as a kid.
Marshfield.
Welcome to Situate Harbor.
It's,
6
uh,
inches an hour.
Green Harbor has
it's
our-
Brian, it's 6 font. It
does?
says, welcome to
Yeah.
Scituate.
Yeah.
Wait,
I missed
No
that
way.
one, so.
it's about the same size as this.
Exactly. And it's in Chinese.
Well, the nice thing about the one that we used to have, it actually had, you can call the harbor master.
Oh, yeah, Channel 9, right, right.
Yeah.
Channel 9, it had a little bit of information
Right.
about the entrance to Scituate, and then 6 mile an hour, no wake.
Right.
So you couldn't miss it coming into the harbor.
Brad White even went so far as to kind of activate a website that would coordinate
Yeah.
the getting to the town website and a few of the informational things, which I don't think lasted more than a year. I think it was a pretty nice
Storm.
idea.
Yeah, and I think the storm wrecked the whole
The
sign
sign.
that they had, one of the weird storms, but
But as Steve puts his capital budget together, we should probably talk about.
it's not
putting
it's
signs.
stupid, it's a little float.
Yeah, but
Sign,
Piece of
still.
plywood.
piece of plywood, and
It's not a big expense, it really isn't.
Yeah, we ought to have one coming out of Herring in front of the.
We used to
spit.
have all kinds of, we're starting to lose the day marks too on the rivers. they used to get replaced.
Oh, who puts those in?
The mooring guy in
Russell,
Clark.
that's his.
But
Russ
that's,
Clark
was
was
that,
Louisiana. I don't think he does the day markets now.
He used to.
He used to?
He used to, with the old harbor master, he used to say, tell the old harbor master, and we'll put more in if it just builds the town.
Huh.
But we
Only
haven't.
another 6 weeks, then we don't have to worry about any of this stuff. All goes away.
good point.
Put it on for next day.
Anything else?
But except that most of the people here are year-round, practically year-round boaters, so that's not completely accurate.
Well, you don't have the yahoos.
No, we become the others.
The Yahoos know Aki.
Yeah. But the yahoos are polite enough to slow down when you see somebody on the boat, I think. Slow down.
Yeah.
There's a huge sigh of relief for the majority of my boaters when September whatever comes along, and they're just, oh my God, I'm so happy that these people are back to wherever they are. Not on the
They
water.
forget about their boat.
Forget about their boat. The kids go back to school and they forget about their boat.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I have, I already know.
New business, no, new business.
You
Go ahead.
already said there.
Oh, no, hold on, what,
Oh, we haven't,
I do have something in relation to Mike about the salvage the other night.
Yeah.
Is there any way that somebody could either do something about the access to the driftway? Because even me getting in there with a 25-foot trailer and trying to get that boat out of there was a huge pain.
What are we talking about, the driftway?
The launch?
Yeah.
The anthill.
At the anthill, yes, as Mike calls it, the old sand and gravel pit in American Park Road. Is that like set in stone, that layout? Like, does that have to
Well,
be there?
they don't want it for anything more than 12-foot boats being launched there. I think, is that what?
Well, I've seen a
Why is
lot
that?
of 27-foot,
Yeah,
30-foot boats.
I'm
being launched
just
there.
telling you, this is what we were told a couple of
Okay.
years ago, right?
Was this a couple of years ago or like 10 years ago?
A couple
Because
years ago.
now I've seen on the weekends, I've seen people parking their cars in parking spots
Yeah.
and walking their trailers around
Yeah.
and putting their trailers on the grass.
Yeah, Brad White posted a picture last week where they were behind the actual barriers.
Yes.
Correct.
I'm like, how the heck do you even get
Well,
back there? I have no idea.
And I have an update to that update. What happened was that there were so many trailers there a week ago on the weekend that Scituate PD came and towed and confiscated all the trailers.
Is it really?
They did, because they didn't confiscate trailers that were legally registered or attached to a vehicle. They confiscated all the trailers that were littered amongst the seagrass.
So people had to call
and
and say it got
lawns.
stolen, they said, no, we got it here.
No, because they all basically came to my marina and said, I don't have an option. I can't haul my boat out. Somebody took my trailer. He called Scituate PD and they said, yes, we did. Oh, by the way, it's the 4th of July, come on the 7th.
Yeah.
But you can get it.
Transient business for you then.
Oh, yeah.
What do you get, a
Because
travel?
nothing pays like a 13
That's probably a
foot.
good question. Mike, that's probably a good question.
And that's what I'm saying, that they said the water action plan, I mean, something should be done about that. I mean, even if you go there, like, I try to get there, like, if I'm launching something
5 in the
commercially,
morning or something. yeah.
5 in the morning, even then, like the other day, I was pulling up the ramp in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Somebody parked their car right in front of the no parking tow
Is that a
sign.
signage issue? Well, you
I
can't get a bigger boat.
I have over 30 pictures of people parking directly in front of the no parking
I think
sign.
it's just an arrogance issue.
It's an arrogance issue because
I gotta walk
I have
my dog.
30 pictures of them parking there and there's completely
No.
empty spaces everywhere else. It's just, because they have to.
But I'm just
they
saying,
have to walk
if we have an issue with the spit, the closest place to go for public access is to the anthill, as we all call it.
Yeah.
And, you know, because you can't, if you go to Rhodes and he's got a million people parked in the parking
You
lot,
can't get a big vehicle.
you got a swift current going through there, you're not gonna get a boat on a trailer if somebody is
Right.
sinking on the spit like they have before.
Right. 3 weeks ago, there was a boat that, the transom collapsed on the boat. And it was coordinated with the Scituate Harbor Master and the Marshfield Harbor Master. Mike DeMeo suggested that they go to the anthill because at least if they beached it. And he says, oh, I want to go to Rote. And the thing is with the current, the swift current, depending on where it's going, it's either going to drive you away from Rote or smash them in your docks.
Right.
So one of the, and that's also, unfortunately, when we've had major medical problems on the spit, that's where they land the helicopter at the golf course.
Right.
And they beach in there, and so it's a definite public safety. Even if you had a gate that was openable.
So your point is, you don't want it for a bigger boat, you just want access.
Exactly. You can't turn, I can't get a hydraulic trailer on there, a smaller hydraulic trailer, forget about it.
That's if no cars are.
It's not easy to get a decent sized trailer there to haul out a decent sized boat.
And it's not made for that, that ramp isn't made for
The
that.
access should be a better quality access.
Yes, a better quality access. I mean, if something happened that we had a 30-foot towboat sink and we couldn't go to a road marine or road marine and say, hey, don't even.
Well,
put
you
that in
tow
here.
cars
So
out
who is
there.
that? DPW? Who is that?
We don't know.
Nobody wants to. So what I'm saying is,
But
since
they-
couldn't get in there and
the
haul
state
out
or
a
the
decent
town?
sized boat.
Environmental
It's
thing.
not an
They
option.
didn't
A
want
couple
it.
of years ago, they wanted to close that ramp down.
Yeah.
And it was a big go back and forth about the size of boats and how many boats. I think the Scituate Police and Selectmen wanted to close it down because of spit access. They didn't want people launching their power boats and going down the spit.
Because they're
And then
going
they,
over the.
It was
It's not a
the
real.
past
ramp there,
conservation
so.
agent.
oh,
It was
okay.
what?
The past conservation agent went over to the transfer station and got the loader to come over and put the blocks there
Right.
at his discretion.
So that got taken.
So it brought it to a head. It was a big,
Yeah,
it's about riparian rights, it's about all of those things, about having access to the river. And
Yeah, it is great for kayakers, I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
Park and.
It is, but there's no other public access, like somebody like me,
No,
I can't go in this road and say, hey, I gotta haul a boat up, you know?
you gotta come over here,
Forget about you then, buddy.
Well, no, he used to provide public access, but now that the focus is more bar and entertainment,
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
that you can't even get.
the North River Marine ramp.
That's road too,
It's
That's
hard to
right,
get in
too.
there, and they got so much parking and stuff
Right,
like that,
that's
you can't
right.
go. You'd have to back in off of 3A and come in, and even that, if it's low tide or something like that, and,
Right.
you know, you never know. So I'm just
That is a
saying,
good
the
ramp.
public access should be open to things like that.
That's a
Harbor
good
management
point.
plan.
Good point.
No, that's what the problem is, because if not, you gotta tow the person around over here to Jericho Road, or Mike's Travel is just no longer on.
Well, Marshfield,
Or you
Marshfield Town Ramp.
Yeah.
Marshfield, Yorkville,
Right.
that
Mike,
ramp,
have you
that's-
But if it's low tide, you can't go through there, because you can't get through, because the South River's not rich.
What are you bringing through there?
If it's low tide, you're not having the
If
ambulance.
your boat sank, if you sank coming in, could I get you back up the South River at low tide?
Not if it was sunk, no.
After I de-watered it, had it floated.
But you couldn't get it up the
But
Herring.
I couldn't get it up to the
Couldn't get the
thing.
herring over either, so.
Thank you for your point.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, all right. Second, that motion to adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.